Bob Saget, may he rest in peace. We have his autopsy report, and I'm looking at it, and he did have COVID, and it was a blunt head injury that he died of. It was an accident. The coroner deemed it an accident. But what I found interesting was that he had clonazepam, which is taken for seizures and panic disorders and anxiety, and additionally he had the antidepressant trazodone. I hope I'm saying that right, in his system. So I looked this drug up. Klonopin. It's talking about that this drug is a Hollywood drug. It's used by many in Hollywood. It's originally brought to market for epileptic seizures, along with other drugs in this class, but it has become a prescription of choice for drug users from Hollywood to Wall Street. In the process, these Schedule 3 and 4 substances have also earned the dubious distinction of being second only to opioid painkillers, like OxyContin, as our nation's most widely abused class of drug. 70s-era rock star Stevie Nicks is the poster girl for the perils of the Klonopin addiction. In almost every interview, the former lead singer makes a point of mentioning the toll her abuse of the drug has taken on her life. She told Fox that she blamed Klonopin for the fact that she never had children. The only thing I'd change in my life is walking into the office of that psychiatrist who prescribed me Klonopin. That ruined my life for 8 years, she said. God knows, maybe I would have met someone. Maybe I could have had a baby. So this is a drug that is prescribed by psychiatrists. And, you know, I find it sad that that's where Bob Saget was in his life, that he was depressed and anxious and had anxiety. And again, Klonopin, it's not Adderall or Oxy. It's Klonopin. And doctors are doling it out like candy, causing a surge of hellish withdrawals, overdoses, and deaths. Bob Saget died of a blunt head trauma. But did the drugs in his system have anything to do with leading him to his blunt head trauma?
Per the report, the official cause of death is actually blunt head trauma. Joining us now is CNN chief medical correspondent and neurosurgeon Dr. Sanjay Gupta. Sanjay, I think this was surprising to a lot of people. What does this autopsy report reveal?
I think what it reveals more than anything else is that this was not a sort of simple bump on the head. I think a couple of days ago, what we had heard was that Mr. Saget may have bumped his head sort of as he was getting into bed at his hotel room, and that subsequently caused, you know, a bleeding on his brain. But when you read this autopsy report, that still may be the case, but it was a very significant blow to the head. I can show you, first of all, we put this graphic together just to give you an idea in yellow of all the various bones on his skull that were fractured. It takes a lot of force to do that, and let me show you on the skull model if I can as well. Basically, you know, there was fractures on the back of his head over here and also abrasion over here. So clearly there was some sort of, you know, impact over here. That fracture extended into the right temporal bone over here. So that was a hard blow to just do that. But what was also noted on the autopsy report was that there were skull fractures in the front of his skull over here as well, just above his eyes. So in order to do that, I mean, when I first saw this, if I knew nothing else about what had happened, you would think that maybe this was someone who had fallen down the stairs and had several impacts to the head or been unrestrained in a car accident. I mean, it was that degree of force.
The autopsy clearly reveals more than just a blunt head trauma. It's pointing to the drugs that were in Bob's system, yet medical continues to ignore the problems that we have in our society with drug use. Why? Because they are the ones that are doling out the prescriptions. Why would they speak against those things that they're doing? They would rather focus on the blunt head trauma and ignore the fact that Bob had other issues. And how does this play into the blunt head trauma? Did he have a reaction because he didn't get to the meds fast enough? That's irrelevant to medicine. They're focused on one thing. But even if it was that Bob Saget died because of a complication of his meds, it would still not be brought to light. Our country right now has a huge drug problem. Huge. Much greater than what we're looking at here with Bob Saget. Fentanyl poisoning was the #1 killer last year in America. The #1 killer. Look where COVID is on this list. Suicide above COVID, cancer below COVID, car accidents above COVID. Fentanyl poisoning, the king of all death right now. If Bob Saget's death shines a light on this huge problem and does just a little bit of good, his death will not have been in vain. With mainstream medicine and their push for everything else other than what the real problem is, we're focused on a blunt head trauma in Bob Saget. I'm not dismissing what happened to Bob Saget. May he rest in peace. I feel bad for his family and everyone that was close to him and all his fans. But we cannot ignore the big, huge white elephant in the room. And that's what I continue to see. Opioids like fentanyl, a painkiller 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine, the same drug that killed Prince, by the way, accounted for the bulk of those drug overdose deaths, around 64,000, and the pandemic played a role in this. Crisis of magnitude. Those already taking drugs may be taking higher amounts, and those in recovery may relapse. It's a national crisis, and these deadly fakes, they look just like prescription pills, and they are illegal, and they're made to look like prescription pills, and they're sold online through social media. The DEA has announced that more than 800 arrests and the seizure of this drug and these 1.8 million pills is a part of a 2-month sweep, but it's not enough. Who is abusing these drugs? A lot of people. An estimated 10.1 million Americans ages 12 and above misused opioids in 2019. 12 and above. We're beyond crisis. This is beyond the corona COVID epidemic. Who's going to wake up? Thank you for watching today. This is Gabriella Brown, the founder of Tooth Soap, the alternative to mainstream. Feel a difference after the first brushing, guaranteed.